think we're all trying to wake up this morning. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our media availabilities here today at Michigan International Speedway. We've now been joined by Carson Hocevar. Carson, thanks for joining us. We appreciate the time. We're going to go ahead and go to questions from the media. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you, and we'll come up front to Zach. Oh, we're grabbing a mic. Hang on one second.
Zach Sterniolo, NASCAR.com. Ricky talked on SiriusXM this week, saying that you had reached out and you guys are in a good spot now. Can you kind of, what was that conversation like? What did you feel like you needed to reach out, and where do things stand between you guys now?
Yeah, I mean, it was, productive. Me and him have, both have the reputation, I guess, of both being aggressive at times and everything. So, we just, at one point we both reminded each other that even with those reputations, obviously we've raced each other very well together, right? It clashes together. So, I mean, we've had no issues before, as he had said, and feel like we've had a decent relationship leading up to this. So, I thought it was productive, and based off his comments, I felt like it was received productive.
All right, additional questions?
John Crane, NASCAR.com. When you look at the banking at this track and the track surface specifically, what makes this track so unique?
Yeah, I mean, the straightaways are just so long. The corners are so long, or sweeping. It's just this track in general is just just very large. The whole thing is basically or feels banked the same way around. So you just carry so much speed, and especially here in a minute, we're gonna go really easy wide open in the trucks, and potentially easy wide open in cup qualifying. Especially how cold it is here. So. It's obviously very unique, but I think it's eventually it'll start aging even more. That you carried a lot of speed with not a lot of grip.
All right, go ahead.
Steve Schweitzer with the Let's Go Press. Carson, are you the new intimidator, and do you feel comfortable with that characterization?
I mean, if I win 7 championships, I would potentially want to whatever, but. It's obviously, if you're gonna get compared to one guy, that's the guy, and endorsements from Dale Jr. everybody, but I don't think I'm new anything. I think I'm new me. And I think that's everything about me is real. Like, I'm not trying to play a part or try to fit a role or trying to pretend to be anybody. That's for everybody else to decide, what they get and perceive of me, but I know who I am, and ultimately, I want to be known as me, and sometimes that leads to comparisons.
Yeah, thank you, Carson. Roy Akers, Skyview Sports. Coming at the heels of the last 3-4 races and your 10th place finish last year at MIS, it seems like you're on a roll. Do you really feel like you're in a really good place right now as you march toward the playoffs? You went up from, 22nd to 17th? I mean, things are really looking up at Spire and for you.
Yeah, our cars are just continuing to get faster, obviously, and it's been a lot of fun for me to, just how quick Spire can grow and how quick we can get going here. That it's just. It's just a lot of fun that it's just continuous progression, right? If it's one step backwards, we just take 2 steps forward, and that's been fun. That we could have quick turnarounds and quick improvements. This quick really is. You see little teams, they have, they'll circle their few tracks a year that they can run good at, and we're circling the few tracks that we need to completely wholesale, because we. Don't really have that too big of a weak spot in our game right now that we can show up any given week and run, really good. We just want to figure out how to be great at all these places.
All right, go ahead.
Larry Lage, Associated Press. In your mind, what's the line between aggressive, clean driving and reckless driving?
I mean, obviously, I think the line is when it's, blatantly intentional versus, just racing. Obviously, like, we make we make 1,000 decisions a race, right? And sometimes the only decisions you see, especially when you're not leading or up front or on TV, the only decisions you see is the bad ones because that's what they, that causes a yellow and that raises a lot of attention. So, I think every race car driver kind of realizes that at times, and especially intensity will just pick up, especially with how hard it is to pass or whatever. The intensity just starts picking up at certain tracks that, I mean, I think everybody can see the line, and I think that is, kind of the line, and especially as, depending on, how the race goes, that kind of dictates how aggressive everybody's being, and that's sometimes when you start seeing mistakes or, too much aggression.
All right, Lee.
Lee Spencer, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio and Catchfence.com. When you did drop back to 30th in points after Darlington, did you and Luke kind of sit down and say, okay, what do we have to do to forge our way forward?
I mean, yes. But it wasn't like we were 30th in points because we were slow. It was 30th in points because we had some fuel pumps, some blown tires, some motors, some other parts we couldn't handle. So it was just more of just like realizing like, hey, we're 30th in points, not off speed, but just off a lot of freak things that or mechanical issues that we'll fix. It's we have too good of parts, too good of motors, too good of people to not all put all it together. And when it puts all together, we'll be right where we want to be. And weeks in speed like we've been having is exactly what we expected or thought, or why we didn't put our head down and reinvent the wheel when we didn't need to.
Races to go before the playoffs, you guys have a strategy of getting in on points if you don't win.
I mean, yes. I mean, ultimately, you're just trying to just finish as well as you can, and we get stage points a lot this year that really has made the difference. And I think if there was without stage points, we'd be like 30th in points. But with stage points, we're 17th right now. So, we just got to keep doing what we're doing, and we'll be in a decent spot, or hopefully in a good spot to it's not going to be a walk off. I think it's going to be close all the way down the line. Just where we're at in points, but especially if somebody wins. But I think we're up for the challenge.
All right, we're going to go Dustin and then Jeff.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Even though you say there's all these thousands of decisions that are made in a race that happen so quickly, the focus gets to be put on certain ones. Is this past week, was it an exhausting week or a distracting week in having to deal with one decision that was made in a split second?
So it sometimes can be. I think me and Jeff Dickerson has a really good line. Number one is if you're explaining, you're losing, right? And number two, he had always used the line of, if we're sitting here explaining a situation or sitting there talking about it, we're not getting faster. And I use that in this scenario, right? We're too busy, in terms of, I'm having to, this is the focus now. It's not focus of, man, how do we beat the 12 car that's won 2 championships, right? Of just winning a race. It's, okay, how do we have this conversation with their team, this driver that we hit, this all that stuff. So, that's the difference of just like, you just don't want to have those conversations because you're not getting faster with those conversations. Like, that's what slows us down. It's not everything else. It's like, that's now what we're focused on instead of just focused on just like, okay, how do we get 2.8 seconds faster in a whole race to win a race? So I think that was the biggest thing.
And looking ahead to next week, how are you getting adjusted, or what's your plan to try to get adjusted to the higher elevations at Mexico City? Prepare for that as an athlete.
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot, so I'm hoping I'm okay when I get there. No, I'm actually going. I think we get there Thursday, But I'll stay here, and we're actually running. Like, I'm doing more road course prep than altitude prep, and Aaron Ziegler has some radicals or whatever, or some cars that will drive on the road course and just get accustomed to that. And I asked him, I was like, hey, I know you have these cars at this road course club. I was like, I've been just running nonstop on this F1 game. I was like, I got to drive something real on a road course. So that'll be fun, FaceTime with us. Hopefully with a trophy on the way.
All right, Jeff.
How much do you consume all the stuff that's being said about you when you're the center of attention like you were this week, whether it's social media or fan sentiment or Sirius or anything like that? Are you paying attention? Are you looking at what's being said?
Yeah, slightly I forgot that we didn't win the race. I forgot who won for a minute. But number one, it's cool to just be talked about, obviously. You want to be talked about maybe in a different light, but at least they're talking, right? And I think that's big for me. And you consume it, you see it all. As Jeff had, Dickerson had mentioned before, he's like, we're trying to like round the edges, and then you have your like heroes texting you, just don't change, right? He's like, hold on, we need at least something a little different. But so ultimately it's fun to obviously be in the news. It's what I've dreamt of my whole life, of just at least being topic of conversation. So it's cool from that aspect, but obviously you want it, be it when you just dominate a cup race and they can't stop talking to you. That's probably ultimately the next goal, but it's definitely fun to at least see it all, or just see my face everywhere. It's kind of cool.
All right, I think we have a few more. Larry, go back to Madison, Larry in the gray. There you go.
What's it like to be back home, coming off a second place finish?
Yeah, it's, if you're going to have momentum going into any place, or a good finish going into any place, going home is obviously, the spot, home for Ziegler Auto Group, home for me. For whatever reason, I think your crew guys or whatever works a little harder when they know it's the home race. And you feel like you just walk in with a little bit extra confidence. So when you're already feeling good about it, I feel like that's just an extra boost.
Go ahead.
Taylor DeSormo with MLive.com. Carson, after your conversation with Ricky, do you expect Payback, and I guess in the same vein, when it comes to Payback in NASCAR, do you prefer, if you had to pick, do you prefer the fists or the bumper?
Number one, no. And number two, they both hurt in some aspect, one physically and one financially. So, ultimately, hopefully, it's fun for fans. So, whatever.
Is that a tough call to make, to call a competitor that you've maybe roughed up a little bit? What's that like emotionally going into that kind of call?
No. It's not. At least it wasn't, when, me and him had, he owns a sprint car team, so he's one of the only one of the first drivers I'll go talk to, just because I want to ask him about a sprint car team. So, we've had that relationship, right? So, it's not too hard to call. You just pick up the phone and call. I don't get nervous a whole lot, or awkward, or sometimes I am awkward, but I don't get nervous or anything before those calls, and especially when I feel like it's warranted, or you see these guys 38 weekends. It's either you call them or you see them here, so it's probably just easier if you just move that timeline up. That's really the biggest thing.
All right, Steven, did you have a question? Okay.
Steven, StuffFurniture.com. Carson, as a Michigan native, where would a win here, whether it be a truck race or a cup race, where would that rank among your career achievements and of all the races to win?
Yeah, this is number one, or would be number one if we can win here. Hopefully we got two opportunities to do that, which would be, I don't think I'd ever top this one, but if I was able to complete both, but just being able to win one of these would be super, super cool and mean a lot. Somebody asked me earlier how much it would mean. I was like, man, I don't know how to describe it in words, but I promise you when we win, you'll see how much it means, and hopefully we get a chance to show that.
And then Nashville last weekend was your first top 10 on a non-super speedway this season. You guys have had the speed all year, not the finishes, but what does a weekend like last weekend do where you guys had the speed, put it all together, got the finish? What does that do for just confidence, morale, chemistry heading into this weekend and the weeks coming ahead?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's points that we don't feel like was taken away finally. A result that wasn't taken away. It's great to just finally at least have something to look at on Monday or Tuesday. Just for our guys alone, our pit crew guys did a great job on a green flag stop. It's just I feel like we're a lot of times we've been doing the right things and not getting the reward to at least just be happy, or at least somewhat be like, okay, we did it. So. I think it's just big from a confidence standpoint into these last little bit of a push to just be like, okay, like we finally reap the reward of, performing at a high caliber and the high level that we feel like we all can. So I think that's just the biggest thing. It's finally just like a sigh of relief for everybody.
All right, Carson, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Best of luck today.
Thank you.